So you ever look at the market and just think like, wait, how are sellers losing money right now? Because you look and you ask yourself, is Texas supposed to be booming? And guys, I do get that question very, very often. And honestly, what I will tell you, being out here in San Antonio, the new Braunfels area, talking to homeowners, previewing listings, and just helping clients buy and sell, I am seeing more and more sellers take losses that you would not expect. And guys, it's not just because the market is crashing. It's not because something dramatic happened, but because a handful of mistakes are happening over and over again. So that's what I want to talk you through and walk you through today is like what's really happening here on the ground and what I am personally seeing with actual sellers and how you can avoid just falling into the same traps. So guys, make sure you stick around because the last one is the most painful, but it is the most avoidable. So here's what we're covering down in this breakdown. I mean, first of all, the perfect storm scenario, it's hitting certain sellers harder than others. But also, I mean, how overpricing, even by a little, it creates a downward spiral, but also why conditions matter again and the psychology of today's buyer, along with like talking about the hidden danger of relying on the automated valuations and the biggest mistake I see right before a seller loses thousands. And guys, what I'll tell you is what I tell every single homeowner who calls me worried about taking a loss. And if you're a seller or thinking about even selling, this video can potentially save you a ton of stress. So let me start with a group of sellers that are getting hit the hardest. Here's the pattern that I constantly see right now. Most people are taking losses right now. They're the ones that bought between 2020, late 2020 and 2023. I mean, interest rates were insanely low. Demand was sky high, right? People were throwing offers at sellers just to win a house. And guys, I had clients pay over listing price, waiving appraisals, but sometimes sight unseen. And not because they wanted to, but because it was the only way to compete. And honestly, many homes were selling over emotional prices and not for rational ones. And if you fast forward that market to today, along with rates going up, the affordability goes down. And what happens is suddenly that premium that you pay doesn't hold up in the same way. And guys, look, I meet with sellers all the time that say that, guys, Cody, we bought at this price. Should it be worth more now? The real estate market always goes up, right? Look, guys, that's a totally understandable question. But when you look at today's buyers, they aren't buying on based on what you paid. They're buying on what today's conditions are. And unfortunately, that's not 2021 or 2022. Which, guys, this leads me right up to my first major issue. This is the most common and the most expensive mistake that sellers make. It's pricing. Sounds simple, right? But everyone thinks that they know how to do it. But what I will tell you is pricing is where deals are ultimately won and lost because it is all about the price. And here's what most sellers don't want to hear. If you overprice, even by a small amount, you instantly will start losing money. And let me give you a real example. I mean, I recently walked a property here in New Braunfels, beautiful home, guys. The seller wanted to price it based on what last year's sales are, and they also wanted based on negotiating power. And I told them straight up, if we list at that number, we'll get some showings, but we're not going to find the right buyers. But look, I mean, I listed it where he wanted to, and the showings were slow. Feedback said the same thing. Nice house, but overpriced. But by the time they agreed to adjust, we began to chase the market downward. And when buyers see the multiple price drops, they a lot of times will assume one thing. I mean, something must be wrong with the house or no one's bidding on it. And guys, that just creates a false perception, yes, but that perception alone, it can cost seller thousands of dollars because the longer it sits, the worse the offer gets. And what happens is investors start circling and those investors love to submit those lowball offers just to test the water. And what happens is by the time the seller realizes what's even happening, guys, damage is done. I mean, takeaway, you price aggressively, not optimistically. And what you do is you price for today, not for last year. But this is a thing that sellers hate hearing the most because it's true. I mean, you remember 2021 or what about 2022 and maybe even part of 2023? You can list a home with half-finished products. You can have mismatched paints, carpets from 1998, and it will still get multiple offers. Guys, those days are gone. I mean, today's buyer's market want move-in ready, clean, updated, neutral, well-maintained homes. What they do, they compare your home to the next 5 that they're just scrolling through on their phones. And if yours doesn't stack up visually in those first few seconds, guess what? They're moving on. So let me tell you a story. I had a seller that asked me about why don't we just allow them to do, why don't I just pay for carpet allowance? And what they can do, they can change the floor into what they want. And some luxury homes, that's a smart decision because when you get the luxury buyers, they want to do the home they want to do. But this was a first time move home. This was a starter home. So what I advise to the seller is like, hey, look, if you want to sell this house quickly like you do, you need to replace the carpet now. So they did what I advised them to. They replaced the carpet, and guess what? That home was under contract in 24 hours. And not every home happens like that. But on retrospect, when you don't do something like that with a starter home, recognize that you're in a starter home. What happens? Your home is going to get fewer showings. Your fewer showings is going to equal to fewer offers. And what ends up happening is those offers that you do get, they come with a big inspection request at the repair amendment, or they're going to ask for huge closing costs because they know that you're coming in desperate times. And guess what? At the end of it, your profit shrinks, guys. So even a simple prep can make a huge difference. Stuff like fresh paint, new carpet, deep cleaning, landscaping is a big one, decluttering, staging, but it doesn't have to be all these expensive repairs. It just has to help buyers see the potential without even imagining the extra work, but it also allows them just to move in the home. Look, and if you rely on online evaluations, guys, you need to listen to me on this part. Zestimates like Redfin estimates, Realtor.com estimates, all of them. Guess what? Everybody checks them. I know it. But here's the issue. They're not actually looking at your house. And what it is, I recently had 2 homeowners call me with completely 2 different automated values. And they were off by almost $70,000. And what you look at it, same street, same model. And you ask yourself why? Because what the algorithms don't see are updates, conditions, the lot premiums, cul-de-sacs, road noise, landscaping, even backyard improvements, but there's even a school zone influence. But also the other thing that it doesn't take are the builder incentives that are nearby. It just reads data. Straight data is all it does. And when you look at real estate, data without context is dangerous. So what happens is like when sellers lean on these automated numbers, they're either going to list it way too high and it just sits on the market, or they list it way too low and they end up leaving money on the table. And both of those methods, they just lead to losses. And this is why I will always tell sellers, like, you don't want a computer deciding on what your largest asset is worth, because a real valuation requires a human being, an expert, but they need to be walking the property, evaluating the micro market, and not just the zip code, the neighborhood, the pocket, the street. They need to be evaluating the competition as well. So this is a single biggest reason that good homes lose serious money, guys. I mean, because most sellers don't lose money because they just list it way too high. What they end up losing money on is because they just waited too long to correct it. And guys, I see this play out constantly. I mean, what happens? Showings drop, feedback is weak, no offers. And seller just thinks, well, let's just give it another week. Let's just give it another week. And meanwhile, what happens is new listings just keep on hitting the market with the newer comps. They're better priced, they have better condition. They're also better presented too as well, possibly. And what happens is your home gets pushed to page 2. So buyers assume that something is wrong with it because now it's just sitting, and now only offers just come from people that are just looking for the bargain. And guys, here's the truth. Every week you sit overpriced, you end up losing leverage. Sellers may say maybe the right buyer just hasn't come yet, but the reality in today's market is the right buyer sees everything. If they haven't offered, it's because the value isn't lining up with the price. And so what happens is, this is where sellers take the biggest losses, not at the listing, but in the waiting. So look, guys, this part may really surprise you because it has nothing to do with the house too. Sellers don't make decisions in a vacuum. This is what I preach every single day when I talk to sellers and buyers. There's emotion involved, and I understand it, but there's too much of it a lot of times. Guess what? Life does happen. Jobs change. I know there's family needs, relocations, unexpected timelines, and it really raises the stress levels. And what happens is sometimes just sellers rush or they panic because of the pressure. And what happens is with that emotional pressure, it often leads to rush pricing, ignoring the prep work, unrealistic expectations, or listing before the home is truly ready. And look, I've had sellers tell me that, we just need to try to see in what happens. And guys, what I always say is like, you don't want to experiment with your equity. So one of my houses that were on the market, we took 8 months to prepare that house for sale because we wanted to make sure that house was ready to go on the market and not list it too early. Because if it's not ready, then people start coming in with lower offers. And what happens is like when you sell from that place of urgency instead of that place of strategy, you tend to accept those weaker offers. Or even worse, you end up just holding the home longer than what you planned for, and you continually to lose money just through the carrying the cost. Guys, this is why I preach so much about strategy and planning, because it really matters. And the advice that I give clients behind the closed doors, for example, like when a seller calls me worried about taking a loss, I ask them these 3 questions. First of all, do you actually need to sell the home right now? Because if your timeline is flexible, we can plan strategically around the seasonal patterns of the market. I just had one of those meetings this week. What is your real equity situation? Not your emotional one, but your real equity situation, because that is what you're going to have to factor in a lot of times more than what you think. And sometimes it's less than what you think. But the most important thing is I need to see the real numbers before the panic sets in. And also, lastly, what is the minimum repair or presentation work that you can commit to? Because even a small few changes can dramatically shift the final sales price. And look, guys, when we answer those 3 things honestly, that's where I can help you build a plan that's going to protect your equity instead of putting you at an elevated risk. So look, when you're a homeowner in San Antonio, New Braunfels, and you're worried about losing that money, guys, here's the truth. Losses don't happen because the market is bad. What they happen is because decisions weren't strategic. But when you do take the right approach, you can absolutely sell without taking a huge hit. And in many cases, you can actually walk away with more than what you expected. And guys, if you want a real honest breakdown of what your home would sell for today, guys, not a Zestimate, not a guess, reach out to me. No pressure, no obligation. And guess what? I'll give it to you for free. And guys, I'll tell you the truth. Even the truth is where wait 3 months are. I'm not going to sit there and give you some BS answer. And guys, if this video helped out, please hit that like and subscribe button. Share this to people looking to sell in San Antonio, New Braunfels. And guys, most importantly, comment below. What is the biggest concern about selling right now that you see? Because at the end of the day, I will read every single content. I will respond to every single content, even if you tell me hi. Thanks for hanging out with me. I love you guys. Hope you had a happy Thanksgiving, and I'm going to see you next week.